I love discovering artifacts and photographs and that tell about my family story. And in this video, I'm going to share some recent artifacts that I discovered that tell a bit of a story about my grandfather's World War II experience. So let's start by sharing just a little bit about my grandfather. So I'm going to show you the ancestry chart of my grandfather, Andrew Anderson, just to explain a little bit about his family and their arrival in Canada, just to give a little bit of backstory. So his mother, Elizabeth Baxter, arrived in Canada in 1905. She arrived with her father, Robert, and her mother, also named Elizabeth. So in 1905, they arrived here. She was not 12 years old, as I explained in my video, The Not So Sinister Secret of My Granny Anderson, which I'll link to at the end of this video. My grandfather's great-grandfather, Andrew Anderson, he and his wife, Elizabeth Logan, on the actual Anderson side were the first ancestors on that side to arrive in Canada. They were married in 1829 in Glasgow. Elizabeth would have been 16. They had two children that were born in Scotland. They had Andrew, and then born in 1830, and Janet, born in 1832. The first child that was born in Canada was also named Elizabeth, and she was born in 1835. So I know that somewhere between 1832 and 1835 is when they arrived in Canada. Andrew wound up being the mine manager in what's now called Moray, was then called Calbay. They were from a mining family in Scotland. Robert, he and his sons, he had one son that came over, one son that had come before. They were all involved in mining as well. So my grandfather probably would have been destined to be a miner. He grew up in a mining town. His brothers that stayed in the area, and his relatives were mostly miners. My grandfather's family had settled originally in Calbay, which is now called Moray, and by the time my great-grandmother family, the Baxters, had come to Cape Breton, they were living in what's now called Donkin, was at the time called Dominion Number 6, because they used to name the communities after the coal mine. And this would be the Dominion Mining Companies. It was their number 6 mine. Sometime in the early 1940s, he met my grandmother. He also enlisted in the Canadian Army, and at that point, in 1943, to be exact, it was on August 23rd. This is their marriage certificate here. You'll see it's 23rd of August, 1943, down near the bottom. And that is actually the day before he shipped out to overseas. At some point during the war, I'm not sure if it was before he shipped out or was after he arrived in England, he became part of the Lanark and Renfrew Scottish Regiment. They were an anti-aircraft gun regiment. He became an anti-aircraft gunner. Let's say I don't know if that was before or after. That regiment did spend some time in Eastern Canada doing some coastal duties and stuff. So I don't know if at that point he had joined them or if it was when he got over in Europe. I know a little bit about when he was in Europe. He didn't talk a lot about it, as I believe he probably saw a lot of things that quite scarred him. But one thing I do know from him talking is that at some point before he was actually deployed to mainland Europe, he did have some time off where he was able to spend some time in Scotland, visiting, which would be his mother's family, so visiting cousins. Anyways, he was part of this regiment, which had a long storied history, and they were actually connected with the Imperial Black Watch, the Royal Highlanders. In 1928, they became connected with them. This was a regiment based out of Ontario. Like I said, that's why I'm not quite sure how he got involved with them. I do know that how I know that was the particular regiment. It was from when we lived in Ontario growing up. At one point, we were in Lanark for my brother's hockey game, and he had mentioned that was the regiment that he belonged to. In 1944, in July, they were assigned to Italy. Mentioned that was the regiment that he belonged to. So in 1944, in July, they were assigned to Italy. Mentioned that was the regiment that he belonged to. So in 1944, in July, they were assigned to Italy. Mentioned that was the regiment that he belonged to. So in 1944, in July, they were assigned to Italy. Mentioned that was the regiment that he belonged to. So in 1944, in July, they were assigned to Italy. Mentioned that was the regiment that he belonged to. So in 1944, in July, they were assigned to Italy. Mentioned that was the so in 1944, in July, they were assigned to Italy. Mentioned that was the regiment that he belonged to. So in 1944, in July, they were assigned to Italy. Mentioned that was the regiment that he belonged to. So in 1944, in July, they were assigned to Italy. So as you can see from the clips of that video that I shared, and I'll put a link to the whole video, the liberation of Rome, that the Canadian troops were, and the whole Italian front, there was a lot of lives lost. It was a very costly battle. It doesn't get much recognition or notoriety just because it came just 2 days before D-Day. Anyways, this summer, I was at my grandmother's house. We were cleaning out her basement I was cleaning out her basement with my mother, as we prepared to sell the home, because my grandmother had just moved to a nursing home. So she was 99 in October. So there was quite a few things that I picked up, but these two things are specific to my grandfather's military career. They're both kind of unusual things. The first one is actually a series of a few different things that I want to share, and something I think is very unique. I don't know if you can read this. I'm going to say, I'm going to have to cover my face. It says, "Souvenir to my wife, Rome, 1944. It's, I don't know if you can see there, the bottom corner, sorry. So he had this, and there was a series of other smaller handkerchiefs. There's just little ones like this that say Rome, and so there's 4 of those, and there was another larger one that just says a souvenir, Rome. Has no date on it. I'm assuming he got these all at the same time because he was never at Rome at any other point. So this would have been at the point of liberation. I never had saw those before in my life. My mom knew nothing about them. My mom actually thought, oh, I'll just get rid of them, but it's something I thought was important and I wanted to keep. So the picture I have of this from, maybe it's from watching too many war movies or reading too many histories of the war. I'm assuming that there was somewhere in Rome after they liberated. My grandfather was there, possibly even on the outskirts of Rome, and at a market or a place or someplace there was an Italian lady that you can see these are all hand embroidered, and so that was doing these and selling them. Possibly these are old pieces of clothing that she had, dresses or whatnot. I just speculating, but that they were doing it to try to get some income, maybe get some favor with the Allies, because they had been part of the Axis, and at that point they were now realigning themselves with the Allies. Those are quite neat little things. I thought they were really unique, and they tell the story of just him arriving there. It's a kind of a, besides seeing his records, it's kind of a proof, a physical proof that he was there. Now, as I mentioned, he was part of the Lanark and Renfrew Scottish Regiment. So eventually they moved on, and they kept moving north into other parts of Europe. They eventually wound up in March of 1945, entering France. So the second artifact is something a little different. My grandmother up there, her maiden name was McKinnon, and her mother was Catherine McKinnon. So when I was at my grandmother's house, I also found this Bible. It's really kind of musty. It's kind of old. I probably wouldn't have necessarily thought too much of it, but I was looking. Thought, well, sometimes in Bibles there's family records, and so there's an inscription inside, and you can't really read it because it's the way it's kind of worn. It said Two Gumps. That was my grandfather's nickname, and it says Christmas 1944, which at that point he would have still been in Europe, as he didn't return until late in the summer of 1945. Basically, he arrived back in, I believe it was late July, and he arrived back in Canada, and the plan was for him to ship out to the Pacific, and then that part of the war ended. I just want to remind you to keep searching for your ancestors, and make sure you check out that video there about my great-grandmother and their arrival in Canada.